Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be the Wood Elves led by Nerexa facing off against the Vampire Counts who are going to be helmed by Kark here on the Battle for Itza. Certainly one of my favorite maps for testing builds. It's very fast, it's very furious, and you get into action very quickly. Now for the Wood Elf build, it's going to be Mass Archers. So the entire backline is going to be the Gladeguard Starfire Shafts. I believe you can only bring 4 of them. It limits the different variants. But in total, I think if you mix and match the Gladeguard variants, I think you can bring 9 if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's what the Wood Elf player has done. Arrows certainly going to be blotting out the sun here. So Starfire Shafts are really good against the undead. Obviously magic damage is relevant against any ghostly type units, and the fire damage is going to be super pertinent against like Crypt Horrors and any other regenerating monsters, right? So that is the back line here, the Gladeguard Starfire Shafts. The front is going to be standard variants mixed in with the Hagbane tips. And, you know, why not get poison and magic damage if you have a little bit of extra money? On top of that, it's going to be Eternal Guard. Eternal Guard have always been a really nice anchor piece against the undead. Anti-large, armor piercing, they can fight Crypt Horrors, they can fight Graveguard. Yes, they do lose that fight, but they still hold relatively well with their high leadership, and their armor piercing is not bad, right? So yeah, solid spear unit. I honestly think one of the better spear units in the game in tandem with the Silverin Guard. The caster back here is going to be a Spellweaver of Shadows. Melkoth's just to kind of nuke down high-value infantry targets, most likely Graveguard, or if there's any cavalry pieces like Black Knights, Blood Knights coming out, you can also drop it on them to do some damage and slow them down. Now for the Vampire Count army, it's going to be the Great Kark coming in here with zombies on the front line. Double White King is a really good choice. They're shielded, extremely hard to snipe with missiles, and Scab's Wraith is also super good against Wood Elves. Wood Elves pretty much hate any effects like Burning Heads or those Winds type spells or Breath spells that just do a lot of damage against low armored units, and double Scab's Wraith is going to be a classic old school combo here for the undead. Vlad von Karstein moving up. He's got the land battle spells. Yes, so he's got Invocation as well as Raise Dead. Corpse Guards, Graveguards with Shield, so it seems like he was certainly expecting some missiles. So we're going to see if the Wood Elf missile line is going to be able to crack this very, very ferocious undead army. I mean, killing those characters is going to be tough. I wonder how the Wood Elves are going to go about that. I mean, they could just kill everything else and then play the objectives and try and overwhelm them with like Eternal Guard and maybe some like Blade Singers in the fourth quarter to come out and surround them. Like Blade Singers on top of White Kings will definitely butcher them pretty hard. Now, the Archer is getting some shots right out of the gates, and immediately probably going to be switching to that Corpse Guard, I would wager. And nope, looks like they're still going after the White Kings, but some of them do go after the Corpse Guard here. So yes, it looks like that is going to be one of the focus fires. It's very slow. It's a 500 gold unit, and can die pretty quickly to any sort of focus Archer fire. So first Scab's Wraiths go down. Really nice cast. Those Eternal Guard get buttered up pretty good, and the White Kings will most likely continue pushing through and try and get onto the Archers in the backfield, which is what they're able to do there. On the high ground, we do see some cavalry, so the big Blood Knights, the Knights of Red Keep coming out, super metal. Granted, not going to be super good against this Wood Elf style, which is mass spears and bows. I mean, if it can get on top of a bow unit, that's great. But there's a lot of spears. There's also the Spellweaver in the shadows, and it's certainly a little bit dangerous to kind of dive back here, I would say. So it looks like the Corpse Guard's trying to move, trying to flee, but it is in weak binding, -9. Going to start crumbling down. Eternal Guard versus the Graveguard in the front. Eternal Guard, like I said, will lose that fight in a very fair situation, but if you can get the Graveguard low enough, the Eternal Guard might actually have a chance of winning that. And the backfield, double White Kings being super disruptive, just absolutely karate chopping a lot of these units. Granted, there are some spears back here, which do, like I said, have armor piercing, so they can do some okay damage, but it's not going to be the most effective way to kind of clear through them here. As far as this fight goes here, we can see some Skeleton Warriors were summoned by the champion of the night, Vlad von Karstein, the Skeleton Summon, able to shut down some of the Archers, and now the Wood Elves are going to have to start really worrying about defending their backfield, calling out some of the Glade Riders to just peel off whatever is able to kind of start pressuring here. On the side, Eternal Guard versus zombies, and it looks like the Corpse Carts are pretty much being picked off on every front. So the Glade Guard able to blot out the sun, like I said, and melt both of those Corpse Carts. So no, the other one actually got away with about 1200 HP, so very fortunate there for Kark. And now we see a little bit of top pressure coming in from our Vampire Count champion as he sends in the Fellbat. So Fellbat's obviously really, really good at hunting down missile pieces, but the Wood Elf player clearly is expecting this and does have his Glade Riders with spears waiting to intercept those bats. And what is it going to be? More Eternal Guard coming out. Blood Knights looking to lurk around the backfield. The Melkoth's is going to be slowing them down to 53 speed, doing some pretty considerable damage, and it looks like they are losing some models. Now, Blood Knights do have a cool ability called the Flag of Blood Keep. So when they're not in melee, they actually get a missile resist when they're like approaching, making them pretty durable against missiles, but now they're going to be getting a big, big charge into the back. Granted, it looks like the Wood Elf player called all of the missiles to bear. So these two Glade Guard here, these ones right here, and also the two in the middle just all basically turn and put a lot of power into those Blood Knights. But, you know, high armor, healing, shielded, really, really nasty disruption by Kark. But one thing to realize about the Vampire Count army, though it looks very wide, most of its front line is terrible quality. It's mostly skeletons. I think there was like 2 or 3 Graveguard in total. So no, the Elves will probably win a lot of these like isolated chaff fights over the course of a very long battle. But man, these Blood Knights are causing huge problems. I mean, probably not a ton of damage value, and the Withering is active on them, which will make them more vulnerable against basic archers. But they're still able to cause some disruption, charge into the back of multiple archer units, and are really forcing the Wood Elves to use a lot of resources to take them down. Here at the back, you do see 2 archers running, right? So 2 Glade Guard are going to be running for the hills after the Blood Knight charges, and it looks like there are some more hounds back here. So dire wolves and skeletons pouring into the backfield. Meanwhile, Kark, he's learned his lesson. He's got all 3 objectives. You know, it's kind of one of the running things where Kark likes to just get so aggressive sometimes that he forgets to grab the objectives. You know, the bloodlust of the vampires overcomes him, as he is one of our OG vampire count mains here in Total War Warhammer 3. But Eternal Guard finally able to drag down the Blood Knights, who make their final departure here at the end, but not before the Blood Knights actually put a serious hurt on these Blade Riders, it looks like, and also do some good damage against the archers that were there. But I think Blood Knights probably got about 1,000 value, I would wager. Yeah, about 800 from what I saw. Moving through some of the cab units was certainly decent. But man, these White Kings and Vlad just causing tons of pressure in the backfield. Looks like there's going to be another summon coming down. But the Eternal Guard, high leadership on these Elven Spears. Certainly, I like Eternal Guard way more than High Elf Spears. The fact that they have armor piercing is just so incredibly good. And I think their base leadership is also better, and they cost like around the same. But again, each faction should have their own unique nuances, right? Like the Wood Elves don't have any, elite heavy armored cavalry. I mean, they have their elite cavalry, but the factions, there's trade-offs between the both, right? Doggies back here. Dire Pack could be swarming down on the Glade Guard Starfire shafts. That is an extremely cost-effective engagement for the vampires. But the Withering is active on them, and Undead leadership is going to be lowered, crumbling them a little bit quicker. Their armor is pretty much already 0 anyways, but they're going to go down even faster to the Glade Riders moving in, which will crumble their leadership very swiftly. But man, oh man, Vampire Count's looking like they got a nasty push here on the Wood Elves, who are heavily forced back. Granted, there are some Eternal Guard who were able to win their frontline fight against the Chaff, and they are going to be starting to steal objective number 2. On this side, it looks like the Spears trading very cost-effectively into the Graveguard and Zombies, actually, and the Spellweaver of Shadows is going to be plopping on objective number 3 to get some capture weight going there. The Wood Elves are up a little bit in value, but overall, with the Vampire Count healing, I would say they're probably truly ahead on value. But, Vampire Counts can run into these weird situations where they overextend, and then their opponents start to outvalue trade them, and yeah, they can start to be withered down as the game does go on. Dire Wolves versus Glade Riders. Glade Riders are a very good light cavalry unit. Really good combat stats, very cost-effective, and you can see the Dire Wolves going to get melted by that charge there, so very good stuff. These White Kings, man, certainly have heard no bell. They're going strong. 1,900 HP on this one, 3,000 Vlad von Karstein. Basically, just diving into the backfield, and feels much like if any of you guys have ever played an Empire campaign, just the suffering that is fighting Vlad von Karstein. It's just like that in multiplayer. Granted, you can still win with the objectives, so it's a little bit different than having to face him with Balthazar Gelt on like turn 10 and just not being able to kill him. But you guys get the picture. It's still suffering. But man, the Wood Elves with some cheeky objective thefts. We got Cryptors coming across. Cryptors not super good against a lot of Wood Elf units. You're paying for a lot of armor piercing, and they're very vulnerable against spears and bows. But even still, having mass is always a good thing in case there's some cavalry kind of rampaging, or if your opponent wants to go like Treekin heavy. Having Cryptors to counter Treekin spam, I think, is actually a very viable choice. But in this case, the Spears are going to be coming across. The Eternal Guard will for sure get over to objective number 3 and should be able to grind down those Cryptors. And we still see Vlad and the various Zombies and White Kings diving into the backfield, but they're getting a little bit surrounded now. The White Kings are starting to lose out. We do also see the Eternal Guard punishing these Spearmen here. Wow, really big bully beatdown with 120 kills. Granted, mostly Chaff units, but they're probably going to move up to objective number 1. And unless he brings out more Graveguard, if he keeps calling in Zombies, they're probably not going to be able to wrestle the objectives. Okay, there's the Graveguard. I figured he would be calling in the Graveguard relatively soon to try and push back the momentum that the Elves have gotten. Yeah, and the Elves have good capture weight here. Objective 2 is theirs. Objective 3 is theirs. It looks like the Cryptors are chasing some archers back into the Shadow Realm. Another Melkoth's going down from this Shadowcaster so far has gotten about 800 value, which is very cost effective. That caster probably only costs about 800 gold. And still, there's a lot of game to be played here, and Melkoth's certainly to be cast still. So Zombies pressing. The Walking Dead is here, so the Vampire Count's just calling in waves and waves of the Undead to try and re-secure control over the battlefield. But here, the Eternal Guard, even though there's only a couple models, will start to get the capture going, and it's going to take some time. You could also call in maybe some Dire Wolves for the Vampire Counts to keep them from getting that, which I think would be a pretty good choice. Dire Wolves are infantry size, so they're going to perform pretty well against spear units, and that's kind of a bit of a forbidden secret, is that, oftentimes if you're fighting against like the Empire or factions with good quality spear units, if they don't have the best melee defense, you can usually use like hound type units like Chaos Warhounds or Undead Hounds to rear charge them and break them pretty quickly, because spears have terrible killing power against infantry. So you can do pretty well for yourself there. Middle objective, though, is owned by the Wood Elves. Slight blunder, having these spears not standing on the objective, but he does notice it, and the Dryads are going to get there. So Dryads will have 5 capture weight against the Zombies, too. +2 from the Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestone, and these Dryads are beat up. So I think the Corpse Cart has 3 capture weight, and this has 2, and these guys have 5 when they're at full health, but the Spears arriving is going to be helping the situation, and Dryads were pretty much born and bred to annihilate zombie-type units. On the other side, we do see the Wood Elves securing their point, clearing through more and more zombies, while in the backfield, Vlad von Karstein just getting tar-pitted a little bit, and that's the classic way to really deal with like Vlad type characters, Sigvald type characters, is just to tar pit them, leave them in the pits a little bit, and let them fight cost ineffective units and punish them for their lack of mass, right? That's really how you want to deal with them. Like surrounding Prince Sigvald with like a light cavalry unit is like the power fantasy. That's like the best way to take him down. Just get him like surrounded by some Valyrian Reavers, and he's going to take like several minutes to kill them, and just basically be accruing very little value for what he wants to be doing. High ground owned by vampires. Another spear is on the way, and the spear unit, the Eternal Guard, will be very good against the skeleton spearmen here. I think the 2 elf spears will probably win this fight. And the other thing too is like many of the mobile things that they would want to send, like cavalry or cryptors, won't be very good against these spears either. Middle objective though is probably going to be flipped right here. Vampire counts look like they do get the cap weight by pulling the White King back to the objective here. And Vampire Counts do flip that objective while we get the Graveguard starting to get that good value back. Graveguard excellent against the Elven units. Graveguard, you know, with the shields don't have the best armor piercing values, but man, oh man, they have decent combat stats with bonus source infantry, and they can really cut through the lightly armored infantry in a grindy fight. Wood Elves holding on to the side point, man. This is getting a really scrappy game here. 9.8 value here for the forces of the Wood Elves. 8.4 for Kark here. Is Vlad von Karstein and his White King still trying to fight back here? I'm surprised Vlad hasn't dropped an invo on his homie. Certainly would be quite helpful to keep that character alive, but yeah, the White Kings are just being worn down by like sheer attrition. Archer unit coming out, going to be Hagbane Tips. Hagbane Tips shooting into the shielded skeletons obviously won't do the most damage in the world, but if the skeleton spearmen turn about face to start fighting the Eternal Guard here, their backs are suddenly exposed, and they're going to be taking fat damage. So that suddenly becomes a very good fight. And the poison, you know, not amazing, but you know, looks like there's going to be some bats called out. But I would wager that Nerexa is going to be ready to call in some Glade Riders to peel off those fell bats and basically just get free value from that. But we'll have to see. Dryads, you know, very good grindy unit. They do suffer against Graveguard, but against all the other undead chaff, they'll do very well from themselves. Here we get the Dryads and Eternal Guard combo, just kind of tanking and spanking over here as we do see more zombies, skeletons, and corpse guards coming in for the vampire counts. But there's still a little bit of a pocket of archers that might actually be able to punish that corpse guard. We'll have to see. And Vlad is tar pitted. This is the dream right here. And typically, if you're the Vlad player, you want to make sure you're fighting on the objective. So at least he's giving capture weight and fighting presence to something that matters on the battlefield. Whereas right here, he's just basically tar pitted. And Wood Elves have really good leadership. They take a long time to break. I mean, they can be broken quickly because of their low armor, so sometimes just a pure shock of HP loss can break them, but this kind of incremental grinding unit, it's going to take a while for sure. High ground fully controlled. We do see the Glade Riders come in, just like I said, and they absolutely annihilate those Fellbats, pretty much giving the Wood Elves free value, and now there's a Glade Rider which can ride about and do some work. Coming down here, you can use the Glade Riders to intercept reinforcements as they move towards the center of the map. Do all sorts of cool stuff. But looking at the points, Kark is, would he win on one objective? Yes, he would. So if Kark is able to kind of anchor down in the middle objective right now, he would just barely win it. It'd be very close. So there is going to have to be a flip by the Wood Elves if they want a chance to, win the game here, which I think they're going to be more than capable of doing. Glade Riders finishing off the bats here, and the Withering is used on them. I like the Withering being used. It's kind of a cool thing, just like a leadership discouraging effect to crumble like low-tier undead units. Nice charge there. Glade Riders, even though they're very beat up and won't really do a lot of damage, it still does trigger a rear charge penalty, which is going to be applying the leadership debuff. Up on the high ground, we got more Dryads moving in, more Eternal Guard archers looking to be pretty stable. I would wager that those archers will probably finish off these and then move down to the middle to start providing some suppressing fire. And now that the backfield pressure is really diminished, the Wood Elves certainly could start to get more value out of their archers. Here the archers are annihilating that corpse cart, which is not to be, no surprise there. This thing is sitting at 38 leadership and probably will start to crumble pretty quickly. And the Elven Dryads, I think, will maintain this capture. And the big thing for Kark is just going to be swarming the middle objective, I think, getting that grind going. But the problem with blobbing up in the middle and not really having any back pressure on the Elves is that their archer fire is going to get really nasty. We see Melkoth's going down to the Dire Pack, and now there's going to be a countercharge from the Glade Riders. And Dire Pack is pretty good against these type of units, but they're still a Hound unit. And with the Melkoths on them, I think they're probably going to lose this fight. It's going to be pretty close, especially while the charge bonus is active on the Glade Riders of 40. And yeah, you do see the Dire Pack go down and get annihilated. Really nice usage of the Shadow Magic here as more Dire Doggos. It looks like they're going to be called out. So Kark is starting to fall into a bit of a situation where he's summoning cost-ineffective units out of desperation to just try and get weight and fast things. Because he's kind of in a situation where he's like panicking, trying to hold on to these points here. But I do think that Nerexa is probably going to start taking over this game. Yeah, it looks like we got some skeleton spears and some old zombos over on objective 3, but they're going to get crumped down by the elves. The elves are ahead by about 3,000 value, and though Kark has had a little bit of healing this game, it hasn't been too much. And Vlad feels like he hasn't been that impactful. I don't know, maybe it's just because he's sitting on this, he's been fighting in the backfield. Granted, his value is pretty respectable, but I guess like if he had like a Winds of Death or something, man, like a fully erect Winds of Death right down this Wood Elf line could certainly maybe give him a chance of winning the game, right? But he just doesn't have those spells, man. And Vlad's on his way back. The objective is owned by the Wood Elves, but it was taken long enough that now the Wood Elves have had it to the point where they can win just by capturing 2 objectives. They don't need to worry about a triple cap anymore. They've been able to kind of close that gap. And Kark is going to be moving back in with Vlad to try and get that. A little bit of undead resurgence here on the side as some doggos do come in. Very, very good direwolf play. And the corpse guard is still alive, still holding in there, man. This is a scrappy game. You know, right when I was like looking at it, and I was like, wait a second, is this game over? Or the Wood Elf's just going to kind of clean it up? You see Kark just scrapping and microing and getting extra ferocious here as he does send the direwolves to kind of start nibbling on some of these glade riders right here. Spears moving up, providing that sweet, sweet Wood Elf capture weight, and Dryads are also going to be there to help clear things out. And it looks like the Wood Elves are going to be able to kind of stabilize that objective. Having Vanguard deployment on a pretty cost-effective, high killing power unit is great, and Dryads certainly fit that niche very, very well. Wood Elf still holding. Kark trying to run a block, so he's running in with the Skeleton Spearman to try and keep the Elves off the objective, but obviously Nerexa does know this, and he's going to be able to move the Spears in and get on top of the objective and get the capture weight. You guys will notice he's parking his character right here, and that's just kind of providing free capture weight, because if he was sitting anywhere else, it's not really going to be helping you. Might as well sit it on the objectives if you can. Doggos in the back, direwolves trying to dive these archers, multiple units of the Glade Guard, which are going to be extremely punishing to any of the advancing zombies or skeletons or whatever. Are intercepted by the direwolves, but then the direwolves do get run down by the Glade Rider Spears. High ground looking very wooden. Dryads not going to be easy to kill. Glade Guard from the high ground with a sweet, sweet 170 range. The Elven Bows showing their worth. As the Dryads clean up this side point, it looks like that's probably going to be GG. For a moment there, I was like, wait a second, does Kark have something going on? But it's basically full desperation mode. You see zombies and skeletons being called in. Pretty much all the undead are crumbling. He does save up for a little bit of alpha strike pressure on the side, but at the end of the day, the Wood Elf sustainable infantry just going to be able to punish them. And he's easily just eclipsing the 1,500 points here, and that is going to be all she wrote. So very well played. That was a super cool game. I enjoyed seeing a mass bow build. Like, man, I've always been kind of, as an Empire player who, you know, really has their roots in a lot of Warhammer 2 PvP, I just like am so nervous about bringing mass archers or guns or bows against vampire counts because of how effective they are with fellbats and direwolves and cavalry at pressing into your backfield with zombie summons. But he made it work, man. Just a testament to how, like, if somebody really specializes in a faction, they can overcome these niche weaknesses with good play and knowledge of how your faction works. Very fun stuff. And Wood Elves do, like, that's the thing. Empire, if you want to peel fellbats off your guns, you have to call in Empire Knights, which are 850, whereas Wood Elves can peel the Hounds and the Bats using Glade Riders for a much cheaper price point, which I think is a big paradigm of that matchup. So yeah, cool archer play. It was very fun. 1,500 on the Melkoths. Dryad's obviously great, but yeah, very straightforward Wood Elf build. Just straight to business. Archers and then infantry. A little bit of cav support, but nothing elite. And, you know, that makes sense. Wild Riders kind of suck anyway, so might as well just go. Why would you go Wild Riders when these guys kind of do something similar and they're much cheaper? And yeah, it's a shame. Wild Riders are such a cool unit. They've like just been in the pits for so long. Hopefully CA will do something to fix them eventually. And for Kark's build, I think one of the first momentum shifts was probably the Blood Knights being thrown into the backfield. Honestly, the Blood Knights, they were in a starting army, which there wasn't really much for the Blood Knights to do here. I mean, yes, they're still shot cavalry, but a lot of the army was super resilient against them. And Black Knights are much better at kind of clearing out infantry units for their price point. Though Blood Knights are still great, but yeah, I don't think there was much for the Blood Knights to do. So I think that was one of the weaknesses of Kark's build. If he had not had the Blood Knights and maybe he was a little bit wider, had maybe 2 more Graveguard units like the Sternsmen, that could have really changed the momentum of the game. And for the rest of the build, it was fine. Vargheists are interesting. I wonder what he uses those for. Maybe like worried about trees and like big tree monsters, so bringing some armor piercing. Mortis Engine is pretty risky against elves, but still, you know, if they go mass infantry. And I think that Kark was really respecting the kind of rising meta of Wood Elf melee a lot, and that's why he had like a Mortis Engine and maybe brought some Blood Knights to try and, you know, hammer down enemy Glade Cav, whatever, the Christmas Cavalry. But yeah, didn't seem to be the case. GG, well played. Great game by both players, and we'll see you on the other side, ladies and gentlemen.